Good evening, everyone. Actually, good afternoon. Welcome to the 16th Here For You public engagement session as part of our Wood Buffalo recovery efforts. I'm Adam Hardiman. I'm with the Wood Buffalo Recovery Task Force. Welcome to Shell Place. Welcome to McDonald Island. Also should mention that we're also down the road tonight from 6 to 8 at the Syncrude Sport and Wellness Center for a general recovery update focused on our residents from the Draper community. Tonight, you're going to hear a general recovery update. We've many partners here with us this afternoon and this evening. I'll mention them in just a second. About our recovery campaign plan and our 5 pillars, which are people, environment, economy, rebuild, and mitigate. We have many people here tonight to help you from the task force and the municipality. And you'll hear from 4 speakers on 5 topics. You'll hear from Nadia Power speaking to the people pillar. You'll hear from Aaron O'Neill on the environment, Kelly Hansen on the economy, Greg Wolf on our rebuild pillar, and again, Aaron O'Neill on our mitigate pillar. As I mentioned, we have many partners here tonight: the Insurance Bureau of Canada, the YMCA of Wood Buffalo, Red Cross, Government of Alberta, of course, members of the RMWB Task Force, and the municipality, specifically our Economic Development Department, Planning and Development, and the Fort McMurray Fire Department with us as well. So we'll get started with our first pillar, people. I'd like to introduce Nadia Power.
Thank you, Adam. Hi, everybody. Hello to everybody joining us online as well. As Adam said, my name is Nadia, and I'm really happy to represent the people pillar of recovery. The overarching objective of the people pillar is to enhance the well-being of all residents, recognizing that our people are our most valuable resource. So activities in this pillar will focus on inclusion and acceptance through a diversity plan, working with all groups that have a focus on psychosocial recovery. Some of those groups include AHS, the CMHA, some other solutions, Borealis Counselling, our own family and community support services, and many others in the community. We also want to encourage and enable participation in sports and recreational activities, as well as participation in the arts, cultural, and spiritual activities. And we will do that by expanding community development opportunities. Finally, we want to engage in meaningful and needs-based analysis. We want to ensure that our residents are well-informed and owning their recovery. One of the biggest priorities right now is housing. Absolutely, is what we hear most from the residents that contact us. And we just want to let you know that you do have options available. At any time, you can log on to rmwb.ca/housing for more information. Just to hit on a couple of these, though, Wood Buffalo Housing and Development Corporation has their social housing program available, as well as the affordable housing. You can see them at, the address is 203, it's on the screen there, 203-10020 Franklin Avenue, or you can contact Hillary directly at wbhdc.ca or by calling 780-743-4140. Online, you'll also find a list of property managers, different rental agencies that are in the region, and they will be able to help you. And you should also know that many hotels in our region are offering long-term stay rates. If you're looking for support, there are many different avenues, but I just want to highlight a couple right here. Primary support that we're referring people to right now is to the Red Cross. They offer support with rent, mortgage payments, security deposits, furniture, storage, repairs. The best way to get in touch with them is 1-888-553-5505. They have 2 office locations. Their re-entry and scheduled appointments are happening at the Franklin Avenue Red Cross office, and that's next to the A&W, downtown Fort McMurray. They also take walk-ins at their Hardin Street location. Also, if you haven't already heard about Insure, it is the NGO supporting underinsured and uninsured recovery. So they support residents with rebuild and assisting in repairs to their homes. You can contact those at Insure, NSUUR Wood Buffalo @gmail.com, and they will be able to help you out. And finally, of course, we send everybody for any type of support that you're looking for to the Pulse line. I'm going to give you that number again, 780-743-7000. At this point, after a brief overview, I'm just going to hand you over now to Aaron to get on to the next pillar.
Thank you, Nadia. And as Adam mentioned, my name is Erin O'Neill. I'm the Operations Manager with the Recovery Task Force. So I'm here tonight to talk about the environment pillar. It's one of our 5 pillars under the long-term recovery campaign plan for Wood Buffalo. So the main objective under the environment pillar is to continually identify, assess, and measure the effects of the wildfire on our environment. So as many of you know, there has been phase 1 testing done on air and the ash, and phase 2 testing was completed on the soils. Samples were taken from the broader community to make sure that we had a representative sample of all the areas. And these samples were measured against the Alberta Tier 1 soil and groundwater remediation guidelines for residential and parklands. This makes sure that there was making sure we're addressing the human exposure to anything that could be potentially in the air, ash, or soil. And there was no major impacts from any of these tests. This baseline that we use is the most stringent standard based on land use and exposure pathways. So we are confident in the health of our environment. Residents are assured that the test results of phase 1 and phase 2 were satisfactory for the levels. We did measure for the soil specifically, we did measure, take 2 tests, one up to 5 centimeters and then between 5 and 20 centimeters. If there was no exceeding levels between in the 5 centimeters, the 5 to 20 centimeters was not examined by our experts. But we did have those extra samples in case anything was exceeded to make sure that there was no concerns in the soil. The cleanup and remediation, the results were not unexpected. There was no surprising results from what we expected to be in our soil. There was nothing major that came back on any of those soil testings to raise any safety concerns. The municipality has recommended in our demolition permits about removing the top 2 inches or 5 centimeters of the topsoil during cleanup. And this has been done on municipally owned properties as part of our cleanup to make sure that when those areas are rebuilt, that top 2 inches has been removed. If your neighbor does not remove that soil, there is not concerns that that soil has been examined and it will be fine. It has been used in that area. And we are in the process of looking into phase 3 with our partners, the government of Alberta, to do determining the site and the timelines. And those phase 3 testing will be done on public spaces once all the ash and the soil is removed to make sure that there's no concerns, remaining concerns after the removal of that ash and concerns. So if there's any residents, we know a number of residents have had their own testing done. We do just want to make sure that if you do your own testing, you do make sure you do your first do your research, so making sure that you're seeking out a reputable expert, and also making sure that you're measuring your samples against the correct guidelines. We have had a number of individuals that have not measured their samples against the same guidelines and those stringent guidelines that we have measured against them for human health standards. So we want to make sure that they're all being measured at the same level so that residents can compare apples to apples, and they will see that there is not concerns with those samples. And we also want to advise everybody that they can have a conversation with their insurance provider. If you do your own sampling, it is at your own cost, but you can talk to your insurance provider about having those testing done. And now I'd like to pass it over to Kelly Hansen with the economy pillar.
Thanks, Erin. Good evening. My name's Kelly Hansen. I'm the Manager for Economic Development within the Recovery Task Force. The first slide that we're going to see this evening is an outline of what the economy pillar primary objectives are. You can go through those and understand that it's focused on enabling businesses within our region as they return to recover from the consequences of the wildfire. The second one is to support oil and gas production with the RMWB in minimizing the impacts on our local workforce, maximizing the local economic benefits of recovery operations to our RMWB businesses, reaffirming and enhancing our ability to provide regional services and programs, and to seize diversification opportunities that may be presented as part of recovery. In speaking to the second slide, it's going to be what have we heard, what's been done to date, and what can we expect in the future? I'm going to be speaking to some of the programs that have been offered through our economic development within the RMWB. There's a team of dedicated individuals that have been working towards projects since prior to re-entry into the community. What have we heard? On May 30th, a business hotline was established with over 1,600 calls received. Those calls were from businesses within the region outlining where their opportunities for assistance lie, where they could receive, they could provide clarification as to where their risks sit, and they were able to outline where they needed further assistance from various partners throughout the community. A business survey was launched as a part of that hotline as well. Over 4,000 businesses were able to respond. That information was taken and evaluated by the economic development team. Economic development hit the streets and conducted welcome walks throughout the community, visiting hundreds of businesses, thanking them for the hard work it took to open their doors again and returning to the community, hearing their challenges, successes, and again listening to hear where support was needed. What's been done? To date, we've opened up a Back to Business Resource Center, which continues to be operational 5 days a week. It's located at 9816 Hardin Street. There's shared office space, access to business specialists, ongoing programming, and within that, there's also partners, various community partners. You've got Chamber of Commerce, Community Futures, Construction Association, NABA, are all sitting within that building, so it's a one-stop shop. Currently, they also have representatives that are assisting with the phase 2 of funding that was announced yesterday. As of now, more than 30 learning events have been offered within the region, including Ask an Expert in legal, accounting, and marketing. They're also offering a free business coaching program, and they've worked in partnership with those various stakeholders that I mentioned earlier. The resources available, you can find resources for small business financial support at www.ymmsmallbizrecovery.ca or by phoning 1-855-769-2249, visiting the Back to Business Resource Center at 9816 Hardin Street, or going to www.choosewoodbuffalo.ca. And with that, I will turn it over to our next presenter.
Thanks, Kelly. My name is Greg Wolf. I'm with the Safety Codes branch, and I'm going to be speaking about the rebuild process. As most people have probably completed their demolitions now. We know that most of them are done, and a lot of people are wondering about what their responsibilities are going to be toward maintaining their site and possible excavations and other debris that may still be on site. As you can see on the slide, that site fencing it will be required to be installed on all properties that have not been backfilled, or if there are other hazards on the site that are creating a safety concern. So as per the order, it's effective October 31st, backfilling or site fencing has to be in place. So the Alberta Building Code identifies that fences need to be strongly constructed. We're expecting a 6-foot construction fence will meet those standards, and that the fencing will be at the expense of the owner. So as we're moving forward, the municipality is going to be removing the municipally installed fences, and individual owners will be responsible for providing their own fencing and mitigating the hazards on their own properties. You'll need to maintain that and keep that in good shape, and that may require fairly steady maintenance. So you're going to want to make sure you're on top of that. If you have specific questions about the fencing, or if you're thinking about some other sort of way of mitigating that particular hazard or otherwise, just give us a call at the Safety Codes branch. We'll be happy to help you out, provide some guidance, and discuss what other options would be available. As we move into rebuild, we do have some concerns. I'll just say that fencing, if you have an open excavation, is not what we would recommend, not as a first option. There's a number of hazards and risks that you will be incurring by not filling the excavation. You can see in the slide, electing not to protect the base of your excavation has the potential to compromise the soils that are going to be supporting your newly constructed home. the Alberta Building Code has minimum requirements for the bearing capacity of those soils. And as those soils accumulate water and winter comes on, there's a absolute certitude that the bottom of that excavation is going to freeze. Now, as those soils freeze and expand, they're going to lose the integrity that's needed in order to support your foundation should you decide to rebuild. So it's very critical that you go onto site and carefully assess the situation. If you need assistance with that, what we would suggest is you consult a geotechnical consultant. There's a number of engineering and those types of firms in town. We'd be happy to point you to some of them if you want to call the Safety Codes branch. But it's very important that you are engaged in this part of the rebuild process to make sure you're not making mistakes that are going to be costly down the road. Leaving those soils to themselves and allowing them to freeze, again, you could have very costly remediation problems in the spring, as well as the fact that our experience with the frost up here has been that frost could still be in your foundation well into June or even July. That means then if you're planning on building in March or April, that's not going to be possible because the bottom of your excavation, if it hasn't been backfilled or otherwise protected, is going to be frozen quite far down. Removing that frozen material can also be very difficult, and you would need to do that under the supervision of a geotechnical engineer to ensure that you've actually got all of that frozen material out. So important things to consider. These are the conversations we're having with all people that are working on rebuilds when they call us. If you have questions about any of those particular things, feel free to call the Safety Codes branch of Planning and Development. We'd be happy to talk to you about those kinds of things. Another common question we get is regarding rebuild is whether or not you can build in the winter. Of course you can build in the winter, but there are considerations that have to be dealt with as the temperature drops, especially as most people's foundations are going to be concrete. So one of the things, as soon as the outside air temperature drops below 5 degrees Celsius, that's +5, we have to start looking at keeping that concrete at a reasonable temperature so that the concrete will actually hydrate and gain all of its required strength. So for this reason, the building code is very black and white in this, and as you can see in the slide, it says concrete must be kept at a temperature of not less than, that's +10 degrees Celsius, while being mixed and placed and maintained at that temperature for 72 hours after placing. Concrete cannot be placed in mud, standing water, or snow, or on or against any frozen material. No frozen material or ice shall be used in concrete. So another consideration that people considering building in the winter have to consider is that once they've excavated for their foundation, they're going to need to move fairly quickly with their construction in order to prevent the bottom of that foundation from freezing as well. So the concern is that if the ground where you're going to be pouring concrete freezes and you're pouring concrete against that, it's going to rapidly lose temperature. It's critical that that concrete is kept at that temperature for the 3 days because it only can hydrate when it is at that 10 degrees and better temperature. If it gets colder than that, basically what happens is the concrete stops gaining strength and doesn't gain any significant amount of strength after that, seriously impairing the strength of your foundation. We have been monitoring it and we are actively involved with that, and we've been speaking with all the contractors as well to ensure that they understand what our expectations are. And if you have any questions on that, by all means, call our office. We'd be happy to explain that. I'd like to turn it back over to Erin now. Thanks.
Thank you, and I'm just going to present our last pillar, which is the mitigate pillar. So this pillar is our main focus from a public safety lens, or leaving that legacy piece of what can we do after the fire to implement those mitigation measures with a view of improving resiliency and public safety of the threat of future hazards or future wildfires. So on the screen right now, you will see our main objectives as part of the mitigate pillar. So as part of our overall campaign plan, which will be available online after the presentation, I'm just confirming, the campaign plan does provide the overall objectives for each of these pillars. So the mitigate pillar is really about assessing any health risks and from that public safety and future growth perspective lens to make sure that we put in place some mitigation measures that will allow the municipality to proceed in the future to eliminate or decrease some of the risks of potential hazards in the future. So resiliency can be achieved by implementing the measures and reduce the probability of that devastating event. And mitigation does include several layers. So some things there are such as physical controls, such as fire smart or engineering type controls. There's also adding another layer of protection, such as administrative plans, so our emergency response plans, putting those in place and making sure that those are in place and updated as required, and then ensuring a safe and secure mechanism for moving people away from the risk, so evacuation and egress routes, and how people can get out of the area in case there is a hazard or an issue in the town. So currently there's a number of projects underway, and some of these projects do go into the rebuild pillar and the mitigation pillar, but I thought I'd mention them all to you. So hazardous tree removal is underway at this point to remove some of those dead and fallen trees. Regrading of the fire break areas is underway. They're in the areas that we did clean for fire breaks. There are some drainage and grading issues, so that is underway, and all of those draining and gradage issues will be rectified within the coming month. A post-wildfire hazard was complete by an expert in fire smart and forestry, so that has been complete. As a result of that assessment, fire smart phase 1 was complete, where dead and fallen trees were removed, and speaking to the vegetation piece of fire smart, we also talked about doing a Fire Smart Phase 2 project. That project has been announced for the Birchwood Trails. So we are looking at that 2B of removing those dead and fallen trees and cleaning that area. Actually, next week at this session, from Thursday night, there will be a specific section on the Birchwood Trails and Fire Smart Phase 2B. So we do invite residents to join us again next Thursday for that presentation to find specific information out about fire smarting. And we are continuing to make sure that we put in extra mitigation measures to make sure that we are safe from any future hazards that could present in the municipality. And with that, that's our presentation on the 5 pillars, and I'll pass it back over to Adam. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much, Erin. Thank you all our presenters and everyone in the community for joining us here today, this afternoon. So I finish off here with the mitigate pillar. I'm looking over at Councillor Sheldon Germain, who's also with the Wood Buffalo Recovery Committee, and something that was passed last night as a recommendation by the committee to be going to council next Tuesday is the idea of a new egress route, I guess called now the proposed East Clearwater bypass. So that'll be coming up Tuesday at council. So is anyone in the community, anyone in the public that either wants to attend council to speak directly or follow online or on Shaw TV Fort McMurray, you're certainly welcome to do so. Our next presentation will be at 6 o'clock. Thank you again to all of our partners who are here to support our residents for our, I think, 15th Here For You session here at Shell Place at McDonald Island. As always, you can contact us in many number of ways. If you want to contact the Wood Buffalo Recovery Committee or Task Force, you can email recovery@rmwb.ca. If you'd like to contact the municipality in general, anyone, the pulse line, the number is 780-743-7000, or you can email pulseline@rmwb.ca. You can always contact us on Facebook and Twitter as well. So thank you again to everyone on Facebook Live for joining us. I'll just take a look over to Jordan. Do we have any questions coming in from Facebook? Do we have any questions from the audience? Looks like we don't have any, so we'll be back at 6 p.m. for our second presentation on our recovery campaign pillars. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you soon.